but I don't think it's for the same reason that most other people think it's interesting. The part of Among Us that I find fascinating is the task system. When it comes to design, I like to focus on user experience. In Among Us, while most people want to be the imposter, the task system gives the crewmates something to do, which is nice compared to games like Mafia or Werewolf, where the night/killing round is kind of abstracted to a choice while everybody has their eyes closed. So these tasks are something that the players will have to do over and over again. What makes the way they work in Among Us still bearable after countless games people have played? This was all running through my mind over the holidays, and I figured I would join a game jam and try to make a similar system myself. A friend and fellow Twitch streamer, Colonel Games, runs a game jam every month with his community. I've been wanting to join for a while now, but the timing has just never lined up. Usually their jams are around 3 days, but because this one took place over the holidays and New Year's, it has a 2-week time limit to allow for a more relaxed schedule to work on the game. So I joined the Turtle Jam number 9, and the theme that I have to make this mechanic work with is worn thin. I began working on the game live on Twitch and did a brainstorming session with my chat. If you'd like to be involved in future projects like this, check me out at twitch.tv/Finland. And while I'm plugging, let's get the old subscribe and ring that bell out of the way. After a couple false starts of what we wanted the game to be about, a concept finally came together. Instead of being on a spaceship, the player is on a submarine that's been damaged by a sea creature. They will have to run around. Instead of being on a spaceship, the player is on a submarine that's been damaged by a sea creature. They will have to run around to complete tasks or repairs to save the ship and themselves. They must do this within a certain time period because, wait for it, the air supply is wearing thin. Theme achieved. The first step was to get the basic mechanics for the task screen working. When the player moves within range of a task, they can press the spacebar or the on-screen button to activate it. When activated, a simple overlay will drop down with the task on it. You're presented a challenge to execute. Then when complete, the overlay will automatically close itself. I actually found this part not too tricky to set up. It's just a few objects that are parented together and then a motion tool to bring it in. I made 2 simple tasks as a proof of concept, and then I began trying to figure out the art. I didn't know what to make the main player characters, so I opened a poll to my Twitch chat, and they all voted for Red Panda. I've never drawn one of these before, and it took a little bit of back and forth, but in the end, it came out so cute, and I loved them. It just looks so serious. After that, I started on the equipment panels that the player will need to run to in order to fix things. This was a lot of fun, and I spent the rest of the stream making a few little systems of switches and monitors and more. Then the holidays hit, and the progress slowed down quite a bit. I did get some work done, but it was all kind of base level stuff. I added a lot of structures like menus, lighting, the camera, oxygen meter, task counter, and dialogue. But none of it was really refined. It was functional, but it didn't look very good, and I just really took most of the holiday time to relax a bit. After a little break and getting back into it, I hit a challenge that I hadn't really been thinking about. All these little tasks and systems that I made also need a larger version to come down with the overlays. Now, I've never made pixel art at that size. I usually top out at something like 64 pixels by 64 pixels. Now, I've basically set myself up with the challenge of creating something at 450 by 300 pixels, which is huge. I really wasn't expecting to struggle this much, but something as simple as a big red button took me almost an hour to make because I just couldn't get it to look quite right. Sadly for all of the art here, this kind of becomes a running issue from here on out. All of the art just ended up taking me extra long compared to what it normally takes or what I was thinking it would take. Now, when I make games, I try to be very conscious of scope. Between all the game jams and game dev challenges that I do, I've developed a pretty decent heuristic of how long it takes me to do things. And usually, I always try to err on the side of less. But for some reason, I was so focused on the task mechanic that I kept pushing off the fact that each one of these tasks is basically its own minigame that needs art and code to go along with it. Yeah, this was not my best planning moment, and I had taken so much time off over the holidays that from here on out, everything we're going to talk about takes place over 2 days because that's all the time I had left. Designing the task would be another area that I thought would be easier than it ended up being. Because I decided that the game was about a sinking sub and needing to make repairs, I did this mostly to just not straight up copy Among Us. That meant that the repairs and tasks need to relate to an emergency. So simple things like taking out the trash doesn't really make sense in the scenario when you're on a sinking sub. So I do feel like that limited me on some of the task options that I could have chosen. The original plan for the game flow was that the player would run around the ship fixing repairs wherever they found them. Every now and then, a dire emergency would happen that had a separate timer from the oxygen that the player would have to run and fix as fast as possible. But with 2 days left, that separate timer from the oxygen that the player would have to run and fix as fast as possible. But with 2 days left, that went out the window pretty fast because it added a lot more complexity to the systems, and I just didn't have time to get it working. I had been leaving the task design as a future me problem for the entirety of this jam so far, and now future me is here. I dug in and designed 10 different repairs the player would need to fix. The thing is, they vary pretty heavily in the severity of the damage of the repair. Also, there are 3 tasks that are involved in attacking back the monster that attacked you. So instead of having all of the tasks available for the player to run around and complete right off the bat, I chose to make the game a more directed experience, and have the captain of the sub guide you through all the repairs and defenses needed to win. Also, I don't usually use dialogue that pops up, so this was also a chance to experiment with using that as well. Overall, this makes the game very linear and removes most of the replay value, but it's a game jam game. There's always the time crunch to think about, and I'd rather have a fun little experience that the players can play once rather than not at all. As a nod to my friend and the jam organizer, I made his chicken avatar into the captain and wrote some dialogue to direct the player. As an extra nod, Kurtle curses quite a bit on his stream. I have no problem with swearing, and when I'm not on camera, I tend to curse like a sailor myself. So I thought it would be funny to have the chicken captain swearing a good amount of time. But I try to keep my content at least PG-13 because it helps reach a larger audience. So, Captain Kurtle is constantly saying the word cluck, which I found to be hilarious. And really is. So, Captain Kurtle is constantly saying the word cluck, which I found to be hilarious. And really, as long as I'm entertained, that's all that matters. I'm going to be spoiling and showing most of the tasks now. So if you'd like to play the game without any prior knowledge, pause the video now and click the link in the description. The game should take less than 5 minutes to play. Coming up with different things to have the player do was interesting. I tried to have the captain lead the player around repairs in order of severity. The story is that the sub was attacked by a large monster, basically a Kraken type thing. The player needs to stabilize the sub and launch a counterattack to be able to make it out safely. The player starts by fixing a leak in the pipe and cracks in the hull, by picking up and placing objects on the task screen. Then the pressure needs to be fixed by spinning a lever and by turning a wheel. I honestly have no idea how these ones actually are supposed to work. I just needed something else. Really, these tasks are probably the biggest stretch, but video games. After that, the player needs to run to a console and close all of the doors on the ship before running over to the fire suppression system and activating it. That pretty much stabilizes the sub, but you aren't safe yet. Before you fight back, you have to run to the communications panel and call for help using real Morse code. Does this mean I can call this an education game? With the SOS sent, it's time to turn into the aggressor. You must use the sonar to locate and target the monster. Then you have to run to the input panel and put the launch codes in order to arm the torpedo, before finally pushing the big red launch button. If you can do all this before the O2 runs out, you survive. If not, you obviously lose and you get to try again. On the last day, I was up all night grinding to try and get this done. The problem is nothing really seems urgent. You just run around and complete it. I was able to get something, but no music, and overall, the whole thing just felt kinda eh. But I was able to get the game submitted to the jam before time ran out. It was just missing a lot of polish, and I really wasn't very happy with it. Kurtle played it on stream, and he really enjoyed it. Everyone else seemed to really like it and said a lot of nice things, but I just wanted it to be a bit more. Since the jam was over, this one doesn't have a judging round, so I wasn't locked out of updating. I decided to use one more stream and another night to finish up some things, which is actually rare for me in a game jam. I tried to address a lot of issues like the fact that nothing actually felt urgent. I added flashing lights, better sound design, some music, a siren, I fixed a few game-breaking bugs that I found, and one of the biggest things is a lot of players didn't realize that there was an oxygen meter they even had to worry about. So I redesigned the oxygen indicator, which shows how much O2 you have left, and moved it to a more prominent place on the screen so it's harder to miss. I also created a win and lose screen so at the end you have something more than just the very basic generic text that I had in there at the end of the jam. I even threw an homage to Among Us on the win screen with a single bone sticking out of the Kraken tentacle. In the end and after the updates, I'm really happy with the game. No, it's not a game you'll play over and over again, and I'm okay with that. It's a fun few minutes of entertainment that I feel looks really cute and accomplishes my goal of making the Among Us task system to see what it's like. My takeaways is that the task system itself is not hard to design. It's just a box that falls down and you do something on top of it. The hard part is creating all of the different mini games that you have to make in each section. You basically have to think of each task as an extra mechanic for your game that has to be concepted, designed, coded, and implemented. It was actually a pretty good wake-up call because I thought, oh, how hard would that be to put together? Turns out, not incredibly hard, but time-consuming. I did really enjoy the experience of trying something I've never done before, though. And I do hope that you've enjoyed this look into how this fun little game came into being. Thank you all very much for watching. I would like to give an extra special thank you to my amazing patrons, Abby Shaw, David Scott, Daniel
Atrio is a survival meets automation game about capturing creatures that are trying to kill you and using them in your assembly lines. I've already covered the first year of development, but to recap, we designed a main character, some prototypes, and a downtown. And today, I'm going to show you the 3 stunning biomes we created and the 3 major features we added in year 2. Starting with Biome 1, the forest. We decided our main base is going to start in a forest. And this is what we had at the end of year 1. Not exactly a forest, but with a little work, we really spruced it up. Check it out. Spruced it up. Check it out. 3 major features we added in year 2. Starting with Biome 1, the forest. We decided our main base is going to start in a forest. And this is what we had at the end of year 1. Not exactly a forest, but with a little work, we really spruced it up. Check it out. Wait, something's missing. Something really important. That's right, grass. I don't know what you're expecting. But I need to talk about grass because we wrote this awesome shader that lets you control the grass sway. You can change the sway amount from a cool tropical breeze to an acid trip. You can change the speed from a slow to a fast acid trip. And more importantly, you can change the shape of the wind from a cool tropical breeze to a penis. Back to our forest, you can really see the difference without grass and with grass. And now we need to give it some atmosphere. Let's turn off the lights. But to really add to the mood, we add eyes. Lots of eyes. The eyes disappear when your lights grow. But if you venture out into the dark, not only do they follow you, but they'll also attack you. Anyway, the eyes can be kept at bay with torches, but they're only temporary, as indicated by the ring on the ground, which eventually runs out. But when they run out, you'll die. So we added light bulbs. We stole this idea from Astroneer where you can infinitely tether them, and it looks a little something like this. So here it is, our starting forest, and you can see just how much it's changed over the last year. The next thing we did this year, and my personal favorite, was add the blood lake. We needed something to contrast the park and went for something blood red. There's a lot of gorgeous detail that went into this, and all the paths look underwater. But the real magic happens when the player runs across the water. Look at those ripples. They just, I don't know, they bump up this environment one full notch. When it's not busy being broken. We'll fix it in year 3. At this point, our Steam page store goes up. And it turns out that Steam won't surface your game on the up-and-coming list if you don't get 10,000 wish lists. We are at 5.3K, so go wishlist the game. And if you're still unconvinced, I've created a brand new ad just for this vlog to show off our second explorable biome, the downtown area.
Хотите попробовать по-настоящему творческую профессию и достойно зарабатывать через интернет? Да, может быть, это позволит вам больше путешествовать или больше посвящать времени себе или своим близким. Сейчас в интернете очень много информации, научитесь тому, научитесь всему, будьте осторожны. Я предлагаю вам следующее. Возможно, вы чувствуете тренд, что сейчас все компании максимально ломанулись в интернет. Соответственно, всем нужны сайты. Поэтому нужны люди, которые создают эти сайты. И я веб-дизайнер, я зарабатываю на, собственно, сайтах. И даже если вы сейчас не умеете рисовать или программировать с полного нуля, я могу вам рассказать, как это делается. Вы попробуйте,